to the Bailiwick Express podcast. My name is Megan Davis. Martin Shirley has served as the Lieutenant Governor's chauffeur for 9.5 years, driving the Governor, his family and royal guests around the island. Martin retired this week. He tells me about what it's like to drive the limousine, how he feels about having sold the J4 number plate, and the one time he arrived late to a function. Thank you very much for coming in, Martin.
Oh, you're welcome.
First of all, congratulations on your retirement.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you.
When did you actually retire? Was that this week?
Actually retired yesterday. They had a sort of reception for me in Government House in the drawing room, and I got presented with a stunning, beautiful sort of solid silver box, which was engraved, which was I think all the staff sort of chipped in for it, but there was the Lieutenant Governor and his wife Dr. Kidd were there, and all the staff, and the presentation was made, and I delivered a speech myself, but it was sort of it was quite an emotional time actually, but having sort of been up there 9 years, it's like part of the family really, and it's sometimes a bit of a wrench to leave. I think if you've got a job that you're probably not too interested in, it's probably quite easy to leave, but it's a job that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and it's quite an honour and a privilege to be the Lieutenant Governor's chauffeur. So.
Yeah, did you say you've been there for 9 years?
9.5 years, yes. Yeah, started in March 2014.
How many Lieutenant Governors does that?
Yeah, that's, each Governor does a term of 5 years, and this was my third Lieutenant Governor. First one was Sir John and Lady McCall. Second one, Sir Stephen and Lady Dalton, and this one, Lieutenant Governor Jerry Kidd and his wife. Yeah.
Could you sort of talk about your background? What did you do before this job?
Initially from when I was 15, or just before this job, really? Just
before this. Sort of what kind of background you came from, I suppose?
I really, the job I'd done before this, I'd done about 4 years taxi driving. So, had that sort of enabled me to have sort of quite an extensive knowledge of the island, which is obviously extremely important. And I always remember I was just sat outside a pub waiting for a fare. And of course, better part of 10 years ago, the Evening Post on a Thursday was like where they had all the jobs in, and I just saw this job advertised for a Lieutenant Governor's chauffeur, and because you immediately think, oh my God, that would be a fantastic job, but then sort of in the next breath I sort of thought, oh well, that will probably go to some retiring police officer or police sergeant, something like that. So I didn't initially bother applying, but having had fairly extensive chauffeuring sort of qualifications, I used to sort of do a bit part-time for Kerwood's, Mayard's, weddings and funerals, so obviously I was used to sort of driving the Daimler limousine at Kerwood's, etc. So it was only after a little bit of consideration that you could ring up Government House and speak to the lady who ended up being my line manageress. And she sort of asked me if I had an experience, and I said, well, I'd driven for Kerwood's, Mayard's, and private chauffeuring at Signature, etc. So she said, oh, well, you sound like a good candidate, apply, So yes, I applied, and there was actually, I found out later on that there was 82 applicants. So I got shortlisted down to, had 2 interviews, one with the Chief of Staff, which was Charles Woodrow, and a couple of, and the lady Marion Hibbard, who ended up my line manageress. and just a formal interview to start with, and then the next interview, Sir John McCall, Lady McCall, because I don't think they wanted sort of some youngster in there, because they were quite private and they had children, and obviously that's what they've got to look for. So possibly somebody a bit more mature, so probably suited me. It got down to the last three, and then they said they'd let me know, and I got a call the next day saying that they'd like to offer me the job.
And is it right that you were the first person to not be ex-military?
Yes, yeah. The other previous chauffeurs did have some military experience, especially the last one, Kenneth Aldred. He was military. It did say would possibly be an advantage if you had it on the application for military service, but not essential. And I hadn't had any military service, but I think, obviously having, extensive island knowledge, and the fact that, I'd been a chauffeur sort of before probably held me in good stead, really,
And what does your day-to-day look like? What kind of duties?
Well, the day-to-day duties is, a lot of people really probably are not too knowledgeable of what the Lieutenant Governor and his wife actually do, but they do attend, quite an extensive amount of jobs that they go on, whether it be, presenting the card from the King for a 100th birthday. We do quite a number of them, to various other duties. So we go into a planning meeting every Thursday morning, and we discuss the week ahead, and then the events manager up there, she sort of does a weekly programme, so you know exactly sort of what's going to happen, and various duties, like you could be taking the governor up. They do travel quite extensively. They've got four boys as well, who again travel quite extensively. So you do quite a lot of airport runs, and just various events that they attend to, whether they're going to a charity event or up the showground, or there could be a fair on up there, etc. So that's sort of more or less your day-to-day duties,
I think people might also be interested in hearing about what cars you drive.
Yes, well, we did the vehicles that were up there when I arrived. Obviously, there is the Daimler limousine, the Daimler 420, and there was, when I first started, there was it was called J4 because the registration was J4 on it, but it was actually a black Chrysler Voyager. Sort of people carrier, which was it was perfect, sort of electric doors. So it was perfect for the type of job that we do up there, and obviously those two particular cars, we've since we've still got the Chrysler Voyager up there now, but I'm quite sure people will know or remember a year or two ago we sold the number plate, which sort of went for a king's ransom.
Is that a bit sad?
No, I don't. Well, I found it quite sad, actually. I thought it would have been nice to keep it, and it did cause a little bit of a stir, but with a part of the proceeds of the sale of it at auction, we then, the last Lieutenant Governor, Sir Stephen Dalton, thought it would be a sort of a good idea to sort of go electric, and we've now got a London electric, well, it's actually a shuttle, we call it, but it's actually a London electric taxi, sort of a nice royal blue, and it's got the flag on the front. And we've quite taken to it, actually,
It sounds like it was worthwhile.
Yes, it was worthwhile, and you sometimes you just got to move on, and obviously some of the other day-to-day duties up there, you've got to keep the cars sort of immaculately clean, and you've also we've got a works van up there that we run around in, so that's all got to be kept clean, and the governor and his wife, their personal cars, you've got to keep them clean, so there's and I was fortunate to be able to do a bit of DIY and some other sort of jobs up there, and so one sort of had enough to keep sort of busy, really,
Yeah, and you've obviously been to lots of events and sort of interesting locations. Any standouts?
Well, it's always I think it's always nice sort of going to we've been to obviously Gorey Castle's quite a nice one to go to, and obviously been out to Elizabeth Castle, and but yeah, you do realise sort of some of the events that the governor goes to, what a beautiful sort of island that we do live in, and especially on a lovely day, there's probably not a better place, really,
Yeah, Elizabeth Castle. Do they let you drive all the way up?
No, we had to. We just take the driver to the slip, and they get the ferry across, sort of thing. So yeah.
And do you also meet lots of interesting characters? Is there anyone who surprised you?
No, not really. As I mentioned, we've obviously got to drive royalty when they come over. I've driven sort of Princess Royal 4 or 5 occasions, and the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, driven them on various occasions, and currently on the last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday we had the James Cleverly and his wife, the Foreign Secretary, over. So I'd sort of give them a few island tours, and they had a good look round Gorey Castle, which they thoroughly enjoyed. So it does vary, and obviously we do sort of tarmac arrivals for any sort of other dignitaries coming over. We do a lot of different ambassadors, quite a variety of ambassadors. So that's sort of quite interesting as well,
Mm. When you've got people like royalty or ambassadors, is there a lot of protocol and a lot of rules you have to follow? Does it sort of make life really complicated?
Well, you don't really have a lot to do with them. You're basically the driver, and they're generally in the rear of the vehicle with the governor and whatever dignitary is over. So you don't, obviously once you get up Government House, you get out the car and they formally thank you, sort of thing. But you don't really have a lot to do with them, even royalty. I mean, normally once somebody like Princess Anne, she's departing, they normally up the airport on the runway, they line some of the police officers up with the chief of police, etc. And she formally comes round and may just shake your hand and say thank you for sort of driving us, and yeah, it's all good,
Did you have sort of a last ride, anything special that you did?
No, actually. Well, I've they're very pleased to sort of have me to carry on in a relief capacity as a relief chauffeur. We have another relief up there, a guy who's Ian Hornby, which he was a year above me at school, and he actually was in the bottom 3 of the job I applied for because he applied for it. So yeah, he's been a relief more or less for the whole time I've been there, and again, very reliable chap, so I sort of finished yesterday, and my first job at relief is tomorrow morning.
You don't actually get a break.
Yeah, Friday. I've got to go and pick the Lieutenant Governor up about 5:30. He's just had a visit over to the UK, so. Yeah, out the frying pan into the fire, so to say.
You mentioned a few times as well, you know the island really well, you know the roads really well. Is there anywhere you still get lost, or you still need a sat-nav? well,
no, we don't use sat-navs, but we have. Well, I've got a small sort of pocket diary, not a diary. A road map of the roads over here. Yeah, I mean, you can still get a little bit sort of probably lost a little bit up in deeper St Juan sort of thing, because it's not an area that we use too often. But No, essentially, you've just, if you've got good island knowledge, you sort of, you know where you're going, really, and but again, a part of the job is, it's, you've got to be on time, if the governor's attending an event at sort of 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever, you've got to make sure, and, especially heading out west, sometimes you've always got to take traffic, traffic on board, and put that into the mix, and but you get a brief for nearly every job you go on, so it gives a specific time that you're sort of a time allocation. But obviously with traffic that doesn't always work. So what is most important is you've got plan A, and you've also got to have plan B and C. And on many occasions we've had to turn the Daimler around in the middle of the road or whatever, because we've been stuck in traffic, and obviously got to just take a different route, So, but the new chauffeur that's taken over for me, he's a sort of ex-taxi driver, and again he done chauffeuring, so he'll be a good fit for the job.
Yeah. So you've got a replacement. There's someone there who's started?
Yes, he started. He's been there about a week. No, well, it'll be 2 weeks this Monday. So he's. I've had to sort of show him all the ropes, but he seems very capable. So.
Yeah. Is there anything you sort of told him is a particular challenge, or?
Well, yes. Again, he I've obviously mentioned, obviously traffic is, and there is, all the years I've been there really is sort of certain roads that you do try and avoid. I mean, they are sort of busy roads, and probably roads that people would say, oh, well, that's maybe the quickest way there. But, sometimes you just got to weigh up if there was traffic or roadworks you've got to take on board. So really just briefing on what roads to possibly always try and avoid, so...
Do you have any top tips for avoiding traffic, or do you want to not give away all your secrets?
Well, a road I always avoid, is up and down Moormilly, because obviously when the schools are back, you've got all the schools and colleges up there, so it's really, a no-go. And, obviously with the likes of Normans up there, you got a lot of heavy goods vehicles, so it's not one we tend to use.
I suppose something I wanted to come back to is you've had quite a meaningful role in sort of the centre of island life. Is that something that you're reflecting on already?
Yes, it really is. It's and again, the job that we've been in, we obviously go to a huge amount of events, and it's great sort of being a bit part of a bit of the focal life of sort of Jersey over here, and a lot of the events we go to, I mean, they're thrilled to see the governor or governors over the years and their wives there, and especially I think what's quite poignant actually is some of the 100 birthday celebrations we go to. They're you've got to consider these people have more or less been through 2 world wars, and to get a card off the Queen, the late Queen, and currently obviously the King, which the governor opens and he reads out to them. It really is. It can be quite choking for some of them. Really, it's. But yes, being part of that, it's obviously in Jersey Life, we've been to scores of events, and you feel as though you are part of the sort of community, really,
Yeah. What happens at the 100th birthday events, parties? Do you sort of show up with a card?
Yeah, well, generally what happens, we always check. You must consider that probably 95% of these people are in sort of nursing homes, and up at Government House we always check a day or two before excuse me, to make sure that the card has arrived from the King, and only recently a couple of we went to recently, the card hadn't arrived on time, which was a little bit disappointing, but when it did arrive, we sort of went back there a couple of days later, and basically what it is, we it's my job really to go in with the governor and the chief of staff, and his wife, And we normally always take a lovely floral bouquet or such a flower arrangement in, and we present it to them, and the governor, and by and large, a lot of the people are sort of, pretty, some of them are absolutely remarkable. They're sharp as a tack, and sadly, due to their age, some not quite so, the governor, you've got to judge it accordingly, really, but we generally get that information, from the matron before we go in or whatever. But some of them, I remember there was a chap from Manchester. I think we went up there with Sir Stephen Dalton, the last governor, up Jean Jugan, and he was a little silver-haired chap, and he was absolutely bright. If you'd have looked at him when you were speaking to him, you wouldn't give him no more than 75, really. And he played for many, many years. He was a professional drummer in his day, and he did play with some notable bands in the UK. And I always remember when we went to see him, his daughter said to me, he was chatting and chatting and chatting away with the governor. And I was chatting with his daughter, and she said, the governor won't get a word in edgeways with him, And lo and behold, they had a drum kit there, and he gave the governor a rendition. But he played in a band over here in the Laurelson Hotel, a jazz band, for some 40-odd years. So he was an extremely interesting character, and I hope he's still alive to this day. I'm not sure, but let's hope so.
Oh, that's fantastic. And aspirational, I want to be like
yes,
that.
Yes, it was absolutely incredible. And I always remember another little Scottish sort of chap, and he had a reception at the Green Hill Country Hotel, and again, if you looked at him, he had he was a Scottish guy, I think, and he obviously had his waistcoat and kilt on, and absolutely remarkable chap. And again, if you'd have looked at him in talking to him, you'd have given him no more than 75, 80, and it really is. It's quite incredible when you see people like that, and I think if you've got that sort of health and all that, I think we'd all like to live to 100, really.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for the future of being relief chauffeur?
Well, relief chauffeur, obviously, I'm due to go to Australia for a couple of months in November, so I won't be doing any chauffeuring during those months. And but yes, they'll should the chauffeur, the current one, should he be on holiday or sick or whatever, they'll either get in touch with myself or our other relief chauffeur, and long as they've got cover, they're not really sort of, whether I get elevated to the chief relief, I'm not sure. But looking forward to that. But I'm going to have a little bit of a time out and collect my thoughts. But I used to do quite a bit of part-time, what I still do, for Maillards and Kerwoods, the chauffeur company, and being a funeral driver or a wedding driver and or bearer. So I'm also so another company from De Gruchy, they've got in touch with me, so they're sort of looking forward to my services. So that will really just give me a little bit of pocket money. So I'm looking forward to that, really.
Yeah. And obviously, over your 9.5 years, you get to know the governors quite well. Have you had a favourite?
Well, it's a good question, actually. And they're all and their wives, they really are fantastic people, and it's only when you see them when they're sort of doing speeches or whatever, you can really, it's quite daunting, because you can really see how they got to the top of their profession. And a favourite, no, it's I've really got on tremendously well with them all. Obviously, I suppose a bit of an affection for my first one, John McCall, but being in the army, and he was a fantastic. They've all, in all honesty, I've only worked for this current one he's only been in office for about a year, but again, a tremendously nice chap. Sir Stephen Dalton, they've all been absolutely remarkable people, and I feel quite privileged to have been in the position to work alongside them, really, Yeah. And of course, being the chauffeur, you do get quite an affinity with the governors because, you obviously spend quite a lot of time with them, likewise, the three people that probably spend the most time with them is, myself, chief of staff, and possibly the house manager, so it's a fortunate position to be in, really,
Yeah, do you chat a lot in the car?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I mean, the last one's Sir Stephen Dalton, and this current one, they talk to you about everything and anything. I mean, the last two governors, they've been sort of car freaks, really. They like talking quite a bit about cars, and but they're John McCall. He was a little bit more sort of formal, I suppose. If you're driving him up the airport, he'd sort of say, "Oh, morning, Martin, how you doing?" And then he wouldn't have too much conversation. Whereas Stephen Dalton and Jeremy Kidd, they're good old chatterboxes.
Anything else you wanted to mention that stands out to you, or maybe that you want people to know?
No, I don't think so. There was one occasion where I was always sort of a yards, feet and inches and a pound, shillings and pence. So when you start at Government House, everything's hundreds hours, like 1900, 2000. And I do remember on one occasion, I'd only been up there a number of weeks actually, and I had to take Sir John and Lady McCall to a function at the Royal Yacht Hotel. So the function was to be, I think it was to be a couple of hours long, and so I was living at sort of Grouville then, so I dropped them there, drove home, and I assumed I should be back at, 2100 hours, and I just happened to be home cooking, and I had my rota by the side of me, and I'd been home for quite a while, and I just happened to glance down at, and by this time I'm out of my uniform and in a pair of shorts and flip-flops, being a lovely summer's night, and I just happened to glance down, and I thought, oh my God, I was supposed to pick them up sort of 15 minutes ago. So I was in full uniform and back sitting outside the Royal Yacht, having driven down there at rapid speed some 8 or 9 minutes later. And when I arrived there, they certainly weren't standing outside. So I thought, I've managed this all right. They're probably still in the event. And it was only some sort of 10 minutes later, and then it went 15, 20 minutes later, and I was getting a little bit anxious. And 25 minutes later, my phone rings, and it was Sir John McCall with quite a stern voice, and he said, "Oh, Martin, are you down there?" And I said, "Yes, sir, but I'm afraid I was late." I thought, you've got to be, one thing you've got to be is honest, And he said, "Well, we have walked home." And I could just, he said it was a lovely night, so we decided to walk home, and I profusely apologised, but I could feel the blood draining from my body, sort of thing, So after having quite a sleepless night, 5 to 9 the next morning, I marched straight into the Charles Woodrow's office, who was the chief of staff, and apologised to him and explained the situation, and he was sort of very accommodating, but at least, I don't know if Sir John did have a word with him, but had he had a word with him, at least he would have known that I went in and saw him rather than not mention it. So honesty really was the policy there, but needless to say, I was never late again.
Was it forgiven in the end?
Oh, it was forgiven, but he looked at me next day, and Sir John McCall, and again, I was sort of profusely apologising, and he sort of gave me his wry smile, which he used to do now and again. He said, "Martin, don't let it happen again." And it didn't.
If I can get in a bonus question, you mentioned that you can sort of see some character traits that have helped governors sort of get to the top of their field. Anything they've had in common? Any character traits, habits?
No, I don't think so really. No, I don't really think they had any sort of traits really, but obviously like the likes of John McCall was a 5-star Major General, so he was. I think there was only one person higher than him. And again, Sir Stephen Dalton, I think I would be right in saying he's probably the most. What's the word? Probably the most. When you got titles under your name. Like he's KBC and all that, can't think of the word I'm looking for, but I think he was the most decorated of all the governors, right, and but as I say, when you work alongside these people, and whether they're delivering speeches or obviously. They're it's tremendously rewarding. Just listen to them, and as I mentioned before, you can see most certainly how they got to the top of their tree. And I mean they've met the Queen on vast amount of occasions. And it's very fulfilling, really.
Thank you again for coming in. And congratulations.
Okay, well, thanks very much indeed. Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and looking forward to sort of taking the foot off the pedal, so to speak.
Literally, yeah.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, and enjoy retirement.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me, and I've really enjoyed it, just to impart a few of the duties of the Lieutenant Governor's chauffeur.
Thank you for listening to the Bailiwick Express podcast. For more on all the latest news, head to bailiwickexpress.com, and you can listen to all our audio content on our website or wherever you get your podcasts.